Hello and welcome to Navigating a Career in Finance, the Inside View. This has been organized by the British-Ghanaian Lawyers Union. Thank you to Stephanie Boateng and her team for setting up a fantastic event. It's a great opportunity for all of us to learn and also for us to network. I know it sounds strange to say networking in this setting, but before this event, I think 20 people have already reached out to me and we've connected personally, so that's fantastic, and hopefully many more people can coordinate on the back of this as well. So just introduce myself. My name is Steve Ohene. Very honored to be your host / moderator for this event. Firstly, I hope everyone is very well. It's been a challenging year for all of us, given the pandemic and given the racial tensions that have been happening globally. Given the second wave of the pandemic, so I hope everyone's keeping very safe and very well. Great to have a global audience. I know we have people on from Ghana, so Akwaba. Good evening to the Brits and good afternoon to the people joining from New York and US in general. The event is open to all that are interested in a career in finance, but given this is organized by a lawyers union, there's a slight slant to legal participation within the finance industry. In terms of how it's going to work, it's going to be an hour-long session. I'll go through some questions with the panel, a great panel we've got, for about 30, 40 minutes, and then we'll turn the questions over to the audience. For your questions, if you can send it in chat, our team behind the scenes will pick up your question and try and send them across. If that doesn't work, we'll take it live, so we'll see how it goes. So that's the way we're going to run it, and hopefully that makes sense for everybody. So just to introduce myself properly so you have my background, like I said, my name is Steve Ohene. I studied at the University of Warwick. I have a master's in engineering and management. I interned way back when at UBS and did my graduate program at Goldman Sachs, where I stayed for 6.5 years. Then I transitioned to Bank of America, where I've been for the last 11 years. Most of my career has been spent in prime brokerage. And for those that don't know what prime brokerage is, we service a platform, we'll provide a platform, a financing platform for hedge funds and institutional asset managers to manage their strategy on our platform. So that's really what I do. My path in terms of the internship graduate program and start and transitioning to Bank of America is probably your classic banking path, but we've got a great panel here. I'll get them to introduce themselves and kind of lay out their path, because obviously that'll be very different to mine. So maybe we'll start with Michelle. Why don't you introduce yourself and then also your path to the seat you're sitting now?
Great, thank you, Steve. So my name's Michelle Denso. I'm the Global Head of Trade and Legal for an investment management firm called Man Group PLC. So the firm is a UK-based company. I've been with them for about 11 years now, based on New York. So I've been, even though I'm from the UK and from Ghana, I'm based in New York and have been for almost 6 years now. I got into this industry similar to Steve, who I've known a long time. I interned at Goldman Sachs, then spent a short time there as a legal analyst before going back to school and then getting back into the working world by joining Man Group as an attorney.
Thanks, Michelle. Mami, do you want to introduce yourself and your path to your seat?
Yeah. My name's Marmia Kwafo-Koto. I'm a senior associate at Helen & Overy in London. I've been at A&O for 12 years and I started off there as a paralegal and then worked my way up. And I specialise in advising institutional investors on all aspects of asset management, be it pooled investments, public securities, custody, whatever else. And when we're talking about institutional investors, I'm meaning sort of your sovereign wealth funds, family offices, pension funds and the like.
Excellent, thank you. And Michael, do you want to introduce yourself?
Evening, guys. So my name is Michael Donkor. I'm a wealth manager, financial advisor at Alexander House, part of Quilter Financial Planning. 10 to 11 years in finance, was previously working in stockbroking, started in retail banking and main market investments, and now moved into wealth management, and that's kind of more specializing in pensions, insurance, mortgages, and other forms of investments as well.
Excellent, thank you. Ayo, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So as of today, a private wealth advisor at Goldman Sachs. Mandate-wise, look after ultra high net worth clients really across EMEA. So this is both to look after the actual relationship between us, the bank, and them as clients, but also to invest the assets as well across the full spectrum. I would say perhaps a less conventional path into this. So actually from London, you can probably tell from the accent, born and raised here, studied in economics, maths and stats, not because I particularly loved them all, but because I knew it sounded great as a degree coming out. Was always interested in finance, but found myself actually focused in sales for the first, let's say, half of my corporate career. So I started at Thomson Reuters, specialized in a whole array of financial platforms, data, and sold it to large financial corporations here in the UK and across global Europe. Really spending that time going out, speaking to clients, just came to the, I guess, understanding, and maybe similar to a lot of people on this call, I wanted to actually be in and amongst finance, actually managing money. And how could I work my way into that? So I did all of the exams, did my CFA, finished all 3 levels, and then took what I describe as a sort of academic break by doing a full-time MBA at LBS for 2 years. And then that's where my transition into finance happened. So that's been the full journey. Happy to speak on any portion of that in more detail.
Charles, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you very much. I don't know if you guys hear me. There was a bit of background now.
We can, yeah.
Perfect. Oh yeah, so my name is Charles Arnold. I'm originally from Ivory Coast, so I'm not Ghanaian, but I love Ghanaian people. So I've started my career as an engineer, spent some time at the beginning as an oil engineer, for 2 years, started first a master's in engineering, and then after some time, just realized that I wanted to develop other skills, etc. So I quit my job, went to do another master's in finance, and from this time, I had a bit of experience around, structured finance, BNP Paribas, private equity, with a fund called Emerging Capital Partners, investing a lot in Africa, then start M&A within Lazard in Paris, and then I've been, after that, moving to Cities in 2013. So I've been an investment banker, focused on mergers and acquisitions, as well as everything which is, capital markets, operations such as IPOs and high yield bond, etc. for the past 7 years. And just recently, like 2 months ago, just moved recently to an investment fund, focusing on infrastructure and everything which is agri. So yeah, so that's my one in a nutshell.
Thank you. So that's the panelists for today. I guess one of the key things I heard from all the panelists is their educational background. I know there's quite a few students and master students, etc. on the call. So to the panel, how important is education in terms of gaining access into a career in finance? And should it be specific, or can it be generic in terms of what you study? So maybe I think we'll probably go with Ayo. I think he studied quite a few things. So let's go with Ayo.
So I think when people think of finance as an industry, and especially breaking in, I think sometimes the hardest question to answer is how do you break in the first place? And there are your very traditional channels, so through education, through undergrad into the finance industry. And the meaning is, do I need to study something that is related to or finance or economics before I can break in? So I did, but that was very much my own personal interest. I enjoyed economics. It wasn't a prerequisite to move into finance. I think there's a very clear transferable skill mandate. If you have the right analytical skills, if you have the right interest in finance, if you show that you have a desire to want to be in finance, there is the room to actually move, irrespective of your academic background. I think one of the most important things about coming into finance is that there is a clear interest. Now, you can demonstrate that interest through your academics. Let's say you have studied a master's in finance, then there is that initial, why does this individual want to spend all of their working hours, which can be intense, in finance if there is no clear indication that this is something that they actually want to do? So for me, it was, well, if I started in sales, and I was very much within the financial industry, but I was servicing the actual industry, looking to make the jump, it was, how can I show whoever sits on the other side that not only do I understand finance, but I have a clear interest? And for me, it was just studying exams, and I did them all. I started with the CISI exams, then I moved into the IMC, and then it was the CFA. But this was really just curiosity from my side to say, well, if I'm moving into finance, which function of finance do I want to move into? And, you know, I mean, what skill set do I have to bridge that knowledge gap before I actually jump in? So I think when people think of academia, and the MBA was very much a transitionary process for me. It was how do I break into finance without having to start from the beginning, which is not a bad route to take. It's just you have to be conscious of the entry point in which you enter finance. And the MBA answered that question for me because I could start very much in the role I wanted to do. But when it comes to your academia, it's just how do you show that you can plug that knowledge gap from the beginning? And if it's through your degree, because it's maths or it's economics or it's finance, perfect. But if it's not, well, you can show that you understand where you're trying to move into without having to lean on your academic degree. So it's more a question of, can I show who sits on the other side I understand finance, that I've already started to take the steps toward understanding this industry. And this isn't just a speculative, you know, industry that I want to move into. And more importantly, if I join, I can hit the ground running. So I think that should be the focus when you think of academia or education versus does it have to be directly connected?
Okay. So maybe I'll pivot to Charles, because I think, you know, Charles, you studied engineering much like myself. And the question I often get is, you studied engineering, why have you moved into finance? So I guess from your educational background, has it helped? How have you transitioned?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I think from my perspective, what I would say is that when I was an engineer, you know, I liked this job at the beginning, but I looked at like the next 5-10 years behind, like in front of me. I look at my manager, I just feel like, you know, I don't want to look like this person in the next 10 years. You know, I want to develop other skill sets. But that was interesting because I was an engineer, so it was very mathematics and all this, you know, hard science driven. So there was two choices. Either there's still some room for you if you want to get into finance, for example, everything which is, I guess, market related. Like if you want to work as a quant and where they need all these hard skills as well for you, you know, to perform like strongly. But I was interested in corporate finance. So meaning I needed some, you know, some knowledge around accounting, and I needed to develop some business sense, etc. So it was making a lot of sense for me to sort of go into transition and go to do another master's in finance in order to get into this. But now I've seen being involved with many recruitment, especially in M&A, I've seen like graduate and student from all different backgrounds. You know, someone studied geography at Oxford and come into the program, etc. Because at the end of the day, you'll be trained into, you know, accounting and the basic, etc. But this background and this knowledge in finance, etc., is essential. But it really depends, right, on what field of the game you want to play into.
Okay. And maybe for one of the lawyers, I think it's a bit different for you guys because obviously you need to qualify as a lawyer, and typically banks don't really support that qualification process, not all of them. So how have you managed that? Maybe start with Mami and then finish off with Michelle.
So you're right. So I certainly don't have as many qualifications as I owe. I did, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I did a degree in anthropology and sociology, and then I did the GDL, and I completed that during evening study, just because of, you know, finances weren't quite there. So I did it in the evenings, and then I did the LPC full time. And unfortunately, as Michelle testified, for law, that's not quite enough. You still then need to get a training contract, whether that be in-house or at a, you know, in private practice. And so I was fortunate to get a paralegal opportunity and then train. But that's the extent of my qualifications.
So you're absolutely right. So I'm different from Mami is actually the private practice firm. I'm in-house, an asset management firm, and my route was slightly different. Like Mami, I said, when you're in law school, you have to get your training contract to get qualified. I did a law degree as an undergrad. So my first sort of straight out of secondary school, A levels into university was undergrad law degree for 3 years. When you're studying there, typically for the law route, you have to apply and get what you call vacation placements in your first, second year with law firms. So it was that period that I got an internship with Goldman Sachs. So I took a different route than most people typically will take. I didn't really know that route existed, but I found out that some of these banks also did internship opportunities. So I applied to Goldman Sachs. So my route was very different. I went in-house at a very young age when I was still studying at law school. And then I got an offer from them to stay on as an analyst and kept working through, went back to school, and then went by the New York route and did my New York qualification. So they're very different routes to go in-house. Typically, most people will work in a law firm like Mami are, and then in later years move into an in-house role where you're already qualified. I did all my sort of learning and training in-house with the companies, not with the law firm.
Excellent. And Michael, I wonder if yours was different, because I know you started your career as a broker, and typically they tend to start in a different way. So why don't you explain how your path was?
Yeah, my path was quite different. I mean, I went to university, and when I came out, I went into retail banking. I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do in my career, but I knew I wanted to stay in finance. And through that period, I learned about investing and gaining an interest in stockbroking, and decided to do my CISI level 3 qualification. So similar to IO, kind of moving in that space. But prior to actually doing that qualification, I started off looking at the CFA at the time, which was the Certificate for Financial Advisors, and did my first exam, realized I was more interested in trading and stockbroking, and moved into the CISI. And off the back of that, I started looking for a job as a broker. So I think my trajectory was a bit different, because I didn't end up in a big firm. I was in small boutique investment companies. And through that, the only way I could kind of figure out what else to study was to look in front of me and look at what jobs were going to be at the next step, what would be the next progression for where I was. And, you know, the level 4 was naturally the prerequisite after that, once the RDR kicked in. And after that, I started to look into expanding my knowledge to move further up in wealth management when I decided I wanted to move into that. And the first thing I started to do was look at my CFA and did my level 1 there. But kind of continuing into that path, realizing that I didn't really need it to be a qualified financial advisor, I've put that on the side. So everything I've been doing now has just been really to build up to a chartered financial planning role, you know, do my mortgages exam, and eventually looking to do potentially pension transfers. But everything that I've done has really been in terms of looking at the roles that I want to work towards and find out what qualifications those companies were looking for and what skill sets they needed. And I started learning from that way.
Excellent, thank you. So maybe that's, you know, that covers the entry routine. But if we transition to, you know, once you're in terms of success characteristics, maybe we can talk about, you know, what sort of characteristics do you need to be successful in the field that you're in? And to finish off the question, does that change just because you're Black? Maybe we'll start with Michelle.
Okay, so then you're coming for me for that. So the character, I think you have to be, the hard work you can't miss. You have to be hardworking. Like that's the starting point. Whatever race we are, is the hard work. Some people can get in through the doors, maybe through people they know, through connections, but you need the hard work to sustain you and the knowledge base. So one of the key things I always say is that, at least for me in my personal experience, I support numerous businesses. So I have to keep abreast of those businesses, what affects them, what regulations affect them, keep on top of the market. So that's the first thing, is your knowledge base and constantly learning. It's a constantly evolving role. So there's so many rules in finance. In my little world of prime brokerage legal, there's so many regulations that hit us from Europe, from the US. It's a constant flow. So it's keeping updated, it's knowing your client base, what your clients need. And for me, again, my clients are internal business guys. So the key stakeholders, making sure that I have touching points with them. So you need to be hardworking, you need to be tenacious. Whether being Black affects it, I try not to think that my race affects my role, because I'll tell you what, recently with what's happened this year is questions about, are Black people, I'd hate to think somebody thinks I'm in my seat because I'm a Black woman. I need to fill a certain quota for the firm, so they need to tick the box. I like to think I'm in my seat because I'm knowing I know what I'm doing. That's why I'm in the role. So even if people throw things like quotas or things, whatever is, you still need to know the job to be in the seat and to sustain it. So for me, it's the knowledge factor, it's working hard, it's keeping abreast of recent things that affect your business. So the constant learning, regulations, you have to do that. So those would be the key things that I would sort of throw at, is learn, keep learning. You never know enough. I've been doing this for 11 years. I constantly think that I still need to learn and read more. So that would be my key on that one.
Okay, so that's more from an in-house working for the business perspective. Charles, I think maybe we'll go to you in terms of a more client-facing role within an M&A world. I wonder if that's any different.
Thank you very much, Steve. I think that's a good question. I think Michelle points something important, working hard, and trust me, in M&A we'll test that, right? We test the long hours and the resilience. So apart from you being smart, I think there's a strong component of working hard, being able to deliver on time, etc. You learn to work fast, so on and so forth. And then when it comes to being black or not, it's a very interesting question because, look, I started my career in Paris. Okay, different from London where, you know, I was with a bank where out of 300 bankers, I have like 2 or 3 blacks. And so that's a different setup, right? It's at this stage, you have really to, you know, get into the culture and make sure you sort of, you know, part of the story and learn the culture. I think it's important, especially the French culture. Now, when I came here in the UK to work, it's different. Like you go to a floor, like 30, 60 nationalities. So, you know, the energy is different. But when it comes to M&A, it's something to know that this is a people business, right? It's we are in banks, so we're not like in a factory. We're not constructing fuels, etc. We are doing business. So interaction with people is very critical in the way for your growth, you know, and the way you are able to bring relationship and to navigate all this. And being into a client-facing role, I've been in a situation where, you know, working, for example, in Eastern Europe, where you are the only black guy in the room, versus working with clients in the Middle East or in Africa, where you sort of relate to the people in the room. And you cannot blame people for being, you know, much more at ease with the people that do business with. But it's up to you really to know what is the cultural difference here, what do they value, and somehow trying to breed on it. And generally you get there, right? But it's that's a process where you have to really be aware of your environment, I would say.
And Michael, I know you spent a bit of time in Switzerland as well, so I wonder if there's a different perspective to maybe your answer.
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of things. When I went to Switzerland, that was me kind of moving into the wealth management space for the first time, and I thought I was going out there to mingle with a lot of French people because I went to Geneva. And in certain areas in there, they speak French. And the company I went to had a lot of people from up north that were there, that were pitching offshore pensions and speaking to clients globally. So it was almost like just being in another company in the UK, but still being the one black guy in the room in that kind of company as well. So you had this different mixture of stereotype there. It wasn't just about being black. It was also about familiarizing yourself with the culture, especially when you're speaking to people that live in Geneva and they can hear your tone and they can tell that you're not from this place as well. And they directly associate you with everybody else that's in that space, because it almost felt like anyone that was coming from outside of Switzerland was only coming for this particular area for this particular reason. So that in terms of London, I'd say, you know, you do have to realize that in some of these spaces, I went into the brokering industry. I was in Bank Moorgate area, and in most cases I was the only black guy on the dealing floor in the small boutiques. And one thing you do have to do is work hard, but also you have to give a good impression, because you have to realize that you're opening the doors for somebody that's coming behind you. And sometimes if you don't give the right impression, because you might be the first, second or third person that employer has experienced as a black person. And if you don't give them the right impression, that might close the door for someone that's coming behind you as well. So it's important that you're able to kind of present yourself in the right way, work hard, because you're almost not just competing with your counterparts, but competing with yourself a little bit and whoever's going to come after you, and, you know, just keep going from there. But you always have to have at the back of your mind that, you know, they brought you in there for a reason, to do a job. So you need to be able to do the job, be qualified for it, and just keep going, basically.
Okay. And Ayo, in terms of private wealth, what's the characteristic for success there?
I mean, similar to what everyone here has said. And then I actually quite, the working hard one, it sticks. I mean, I was raised, of course, here in London, but a very Nigerian household. And it was just work hard, get good grades, life is fine. And, you know, that worked up until about uni. Then the real world came and I was like, oh my God, it's not working for the first 2 years. What am I doing wrong? And I think the reality is hard work qualifies you for success, but it just doesn't guarantee it, right? I mean, hard work means that you can take part in being successful. And if you want to be the greatest, and if you want to be good, then you have to outwork those that you are competing with, I'd say, right? So that's your qualification to do well. But if you really want to succeed, then you have to work smart. And I mean, Steve, when you add what does it mean for a Black individual? I can only speak from my personal experience, but I find that when you work hard and you attempt to work smart and you exist within a minority, you have to work a lot more to ensure that your hard work is seen, felt, and heard. Not necessarily because you are actively ignored, but because you are different. And sometimes it's also inherent. Sometimes you feel as if, you know, because I'm so different, I shouldn't do anything to rock the boat so much to let me contain myself and try to fit in. And for me, it's always been 3 pillars. One is, does my hard work, is it correct? Is it of a good standard? Is it visible? And as a Black employee, it was always, am I now doing the right things to ensure that those who maybe are not as comfortable seeing me become comfortable and know what I'm doing? And I'll take that as my responsibility. The second was, do I understand the actual big picture? And again, this was probably, I'd say, a bit of raising, whereas with my Nigerian parents, it was always get your head down, focus, do the work, succeed. And I found in the first few years of my career, I got my head down, I worked in my team, and I did well, but I wasn't locked into the bigger picture of the actual business. Was my work relevant to the bigger business? And that took me a while to understand. And once I locked in and said, actually, what is it that this division actually does? And is my work even relevant to it? And I found certain things I was doing and I'm working very hard on was irrelevant to the business moving forward. It was just a nice task to do. And so I realigned all of the work I did to the wider business, and I found that promotion suddenly started happening. And this leads me to my third point, and this probably leads very heavily into what then, and similar to Michael, I think in every role I've been in, I've been one of 2 Black people. Social dynamics and social capital is very important. If you do not have a sponsor, if you do not have mentors who can, you know, speak for you when you're not in the room, then your progression upwards and through roles will be either limited or very hard to actually do. And I did not work on my social capital in the first few years because I thought to myself, I'm so different. Let me just make sure that my work speaks for me because I do not know how to be myself in this environment. And I found that I had to take on the responsibility to adapt, which then led into assimilation, which is when only one party adapts in a wider population. So all the adapting falls on one person, which is how, I mean, it shouldn't be. Everyone should have to adapt, right? But if the majority don't adapt, then one party has to assimilate. And then it was saying, how can I educate those around me so that they see my difference and then also work on that social capital so that when I'm not in the room, someone speaks on my behalf. And I'd say those are the always characteristics, but also those are the 3 pillars that I think are just crucial in trying to really succeed, especially in finance.
Okay. So maybe let's focus on, you know, we're now sort of, we're in our career and we're trying to get along. And sometimes, you know, we all have to take risk with our career. So the biggest risk I took is moving from Goldman Sachs to Bank of America in 2009 when, you know, Bank of America was taking over Merrill Lynch at the time. So my contract is with Merrill Lynch, but the company's folding and being taken over. So that was a big risk from my perspective. But for me, I saw the opportunity at the end of it, and you know, it's worked out in my favor. What's the biggest risk you've had to take to grow your career? And maybe I'll start with Mami on that one.
I think the biggest career risk is, I've only been at A&O, so I haven't really jumped anywhere else, but I think I was thinking about, you know, who you align yourself with. So there's a saying at A&O that you kind of have to saddle up to a horse and just get on with it. And so it was who I chose to work with. And, you know, it proved to be very successful, but it was challenging. So I started off with a partner who was nothing like me at all, but liked me because, you know, I was willing to work hard. But his way of working was, and just his manner was, you know, just quite tough to get on with. But I chose to ride it out, and as a result, sort of inherited his clients. But I think just touching on the point that Io mentioned, yes, I think it is important to have mentors, to have sponsors, because regardless, there will be things that go wrong in your career. You'll take a risk and sometimes it's like you've hit the jackpot and it's fine. And then sometimes, you know, you do things that's like awfully wrong. And so you really do need guidance from people who are not intimidated by you, who can then help you turn that decision around and get you in the right direction. But I wouldn't say, I think maybe one risk I took was maybe some people would see it as a risk or not, but having a child when I was like 2 years PQE, and then having another one when I was just about to be promoted. And that I think could be characterized as a risk, because I thought I wouldn't be promoted. I thought I would, you know, it would really stifle my career, but it was one of the best decisions I made. And I think through having the right sponsors and mentors around me, I was able to manage it and make sure that it didn't cause me to fall behind in my career, but still have a successful home life.
Excellent, thank you. And Charles, what would you say your biggest risk has been?
Yes, thank you, Steve. I think I've taken few risks in my career overall. I would say the first risk was obviously leaving my first job to go back to school. I mean, I was an engineer. I was working on oil rig. I mean, it was quite well paid at the beginning. I have good perspective, but I didn't really like the job. So I think it boils down to really what is inspiring you and what is making you move, right? And I think I took almost 1 year, you know, taking the whole survey, talking to everyone in finance, etc., to really know, I want to be sure, etc. But I was still not sure, like after 1 year, if I should quit my job or not. So at some point, I feel like if you have a gut feeling and then you think that's where you should be, probably that's where you should go. So I quit the job and, you know, I start back to school again, going back, you know, to not earning money, to pay the school fees, living as a student. You know, this is like a jump in someone's career. I'm sure Ayo can relate when he went back to do his MBA. And then you have also this thing where I was in Paris working there, and then say, look, I had this opportunity to go to South Africa to work. It was again, you know, driven by growth. I'm like, okay, let's go in an environment where I don't know anyone, getting out of my comfort zone. The language was different. You know, my English was good, but it was not exceptional. And I was working in a field where language is very important because you relate to people. And I went there. Similarly, to come to London, I came 5 years ago. I didn't know anyone. So that's always been, you know, the driving force behind that, which is, you know, getting out of your comfort zone, trying something different. And if it fails, you know, it's failed. But if it works, maybe you're going to be a better person. Yeah.
Excellent. And maybe I'll move to you, Michael. I know, you know, the nature of your business means you're running your own business. You're self-employed. So what's the risk there, and how are you managing it?
I guess the risk here is really just managing your own diary, managing your own time, balancing that with your kind of life. You know, I've got a family, 2 wife, 2 kids. So trying to balance, you know, kind of chasing, finding new clients, working with new people, networking, and balancing that around, you know, interacting with the family, picking up the kids from school if I can, interacting with my wife and spending time with the family. So that's been one of the big risks there. And I guess it's just making sure that you actually allocate time for this. You know, for me, it was important that, you know, I do organize my diary and organize my weekends to make sure that I have time for them, and also focus during the week to stay self-motivated, because you're pushing yourself. You know, you have to want to do it. You have to want to succeed in these kind of areas, especially when you're moving into a space like this and you're having to build up your client base. And I guess the risk side of things was when I went to Switzerland, and that was, I wouldn't say it was a gut feeling. There was definitely, you know, kind of a feeling of I'd done as much as I wanted to do in the broking side, and I was ready to move into wealth management, but also wanted to challenge myself a little bit. And I think that's why I ended up in Switzerland for a couple of months. I was there for 6 months to try something new. And, you know, like Charles said, I think it is a case of, you know, sometimes it doesn't always work out, but you learn from those experiences as well. And I think that's important, because you get to learn more about yourself as you go through this career, because you're always learning You're always gaining new understanding of different people, different fields, how to interact with people, because this is finance isn't just about the numbers. It's a people job. You know, you have to be a people person. You have to be able to interact with people, and sometimes you have to learn how to interact with so many different people. So it was a blessing in disguise to go aboard.
Thank you. And Michelle, what's your perspective on this?
I think moving to New York for me was meant to be a 6-month stint. Our head office is in the UK, so that's where reflecting of where the power is for the company. It's the UK. Our CEO is based there. All our executives are there. So if you wanted to really grow your career, you typically try and stay close to the power base. So when I was asked to move here, it was meant to be a 6-month thing. And then when I was asked to stay longer with no end date in sight, that was a challenge for me in the personal front, with leaving family behind and relationships and things. So, and the challenges followed through, because when opportunities came for certain promotions, which didn't happen, you can't help but think, gosh, if I was based in London where the main team is, would this have happened? But like Michael and everybody else says, it challenges you. You get to work outside your comfort zone. And then in the end, it did work out, because I was able to then build out a team here such that our team is now a bit more global. But it was a learning curve. The 5 years is definitely learning to work with different culture, different people, different way of doing things. The American or New York way of working sometimes very different from the European way. But yeah, that was a big risk, but I think it paid off, and I'm glad I did it.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move to the next question. Finance is typically known for long hours, is known for potentially being stressful, but naturally, all of us in finance are very competitive and want to get promoted and, achieve things. How do you balance all of that and then try and manage your work-life balance as well? And maybe Michelle, you're a global head, so maybe you can give us perspective.
It can be challenging, because especially when you're working across different jurisdictions, different time zones, and sometimes you have to balance your personal life and working hours to meet your client, in my case, my internal client needs. But I find that with my seat, I'm lucky that I have a team, so I've learned to lean more on the people I work with. Maybe I can't do it because I've been at the firm longer. It is also asking the right questions. Sometimes deadlines get thrown around for the sake of it. So now I've learned to ask more questions about who wants it, why do they want it, what's driving this time frame, is there something that we can move around? So learning to speak up if you can in your seat, I think, is very helpful. So people don't necessarily ask for things for the sake of it or push things around, which is not achievable. So I'm a realist. I like to ask the tough questions of what's needed and things like that. And you just try and find a way to balance it out. The stress for me, I'm not a very sporty person, but I like to go for long walks, and that helps me mentally. The days where it's like, if it's getting too much, I will shut it. And if it means going to the backyard to get some fresh air just to breathe in, or somebody's really grating at you and you really want to give you some choice words in your response, sometimes it's okay to type it out and then delete and then walk away and then come back when you can actually breathe again. That works for me. You find what works for you. And for some people, it's sports, it's working out, it's meditation, it's prayers. You find what helps you to reset whenever you get a bit frazzled. And that helps me out.
Okay. Thanks, Michelle. And before I move to Ayo on that same question, so to the audience, I'm now looking at your live chat. So if you've got any questions you want me to pose, start putting it there. I've got the first 2 already, but start putting the questions on the live chat and I'll start to pick them up. Ayo, I'll move that question to you.
So, I mean, similar to Michelle, I think an outlook for me has always been exercise. So for me, especially when it comes to balancing being client-facing, especially when your client work isn't stuck to market hours. So my clients can call me any day of the week at any period of time. There is no real off button. There's a less intense period of time, over the weekends and in the evenings, but there's no off. I'm always thinking about something. So actually, regular exercise is good. And actually something I found, and this is, I'm coming back to your theme, Steve, because you threw it in there, but as a black employee, what do I do sometimes if I feel as if, I'm in an environment that is foreign to me, it's unusual. And actually one of the most powerful things was just finding solidarity with other people who understood that sometimes being a minority comes with its, nuances. And sometimes it was someone else who came from my background and we could speak about, oh my God, this is, sometimes finding ourselves or bringing our authentic selves can be a struggle, but how are you doing it? And being able to go on that journey with someone else who understands, I found is always very good as a circuit breaker, not just for work, but also for my existence as well in the structure that I'm in, and also allies. Other people in the workplace who understand the stresses of the workplace. I think in finance now we're very conscious of ensuring that, employees are not overworked. Saturdays have become almost untouchable. And I think finding allies who also support that, both senior and peer-wise, to say, do you know what, it's a Saturday. I will get back to you on Sunday, or I'll get back to you Monday morning. And knowing it's a firm-wide, industry-wide standard, I think has been good, because you don't take it upon yourself to enforce it. Everyone else is doing the same thing. So it's just, I guess, of course, looking after oneself, but finding other people in your environment who are also on the same path or have an affinity to you is great for your own mental well-being as well.
Excellent, thank you. And Charles, what's your perspective?
Very interesting question. I think when it comes to M&A and stuff, I think everyone in the panel, everyone knows that it's one of the characteristics is long hours and working hard and all this interesting stuff. Being all-nighters when you're junior, it happens, right? It's not a secret. But I think sometimes how do you stay consistent and focused in this? I think for me the first thing is it's at some point you have to be excited about the job, really. Because me as a person, I'm very energetic and excited, working on 4 or 5 deals at the same time, looking at your BlackBerry. At some point you call it your BB because it's everywhere with you. Wherever you go, you have a BB, etc. It makes you someone you have to learn to be sharp and go quick. So, and I think those are characteristics that are very important. And I would say your resilience to stress. Now I'm so bad because I'm so stress-free as a person, because I've been there where people asking many quick things all the time. Everything is urgent. So you have to be able to go deeper in the ask to see what is really important and urgent. In the stakeholder management is very key if you want to succeed and manage your deadline and stuff. And that's what I would say, and after Michelle mentioned something very important, which is you have to find a safe space where you can actually unleash all the stress. Me, I play tennis a lot, because I put all my stress in the bowl, or I will run and do something like that, So you have to find your way, but to stay in the business for a long time, and this is very important, it's not for everyone. Why? Because, for example, I had a lot of intern or juniors, very smart guys, but M&A was not for them. Maybe they went to consulting, something different. I have respect for those jobs, but it's just not for them. So there's a component there where people heard about the job, they want to get there because it looks nice on the CV, etc. But you should find other reason really to stay there, because trust me, your motivation will be tested, like thoroughly tested. Yeah, that's why.
Excellent, thank you. I'm just seeing a few questions from the audience, so let me take one from the audience. So a question from Angelos is, if you could take one wish to master one skill and change yourself for the better, what would that be? Maybe I'll direct that to Mami.
I think it would be to master being confident regardless of what people say, because I think sometimes there are things that dent your confidence. I think some people are better at it than others, but I think the self-doubt it can be damaging. So I think it's to consistently be confident regardless.
Excellent, thank you. And Michelle, what would you say to that? If you had to master one skill?
Yeah, I was going to say similar thing to Mami. Is the confidence factor is you won't know everything, and sometimes you'll be put in situations where somebody may throw a question at you right in the middle of it and you haven't even thought about it. Is mastering how to respond to it. And one of my old mentors always said to me is the classic, and he used to be at Goldman Sachs, he just said, just say back to them, that's a great question, haven't thought about it, I'll take it back, and then go do your research. So that line always stuck with me, is not everybody knows everything, and especially in the bank and finance world, some people are very good at the speak, at the talk, and throwing these big words, making themselves appear smarter, which sometimes when you break it down, they're actually not making a lot of sense. So you learn to be responsive and respectful, but I think mastering that is really helpful. Is just, you may not feel confident inside, but nobody can see what's inside. So you present your smile. It's like doing a presentation in front of a huge boardroom. You may be shaking in the inside, but you kind of fake it. You do it, and then you breathe afterwards. So it's that mastering the confidence and knowing that it's okay not to know it all. Nobody ever does.
Another question coming in is, how have you found investor appetite since the onset of COVID-19? So I guess maybe to the private wealth guys. So Ayo, how have you found investor appetite since the onset of COVID-19?
It's a good question. In COVID, suddenly our worlds are flipped. I would say upside down, more inside out, given we spent more time inside than we have outside. But the question is, what has it meant for global markets? I mean, for anyone who's followed the markets in and around February, March, as coronavirus really hit and the seriousness of the severity of the virus hit home, markets fell off, and what you get is a very sort of volatile move down. And we had actually just a volatile move sort of back up the following 2 to 3 months. In that period of time, there were a lot of investor questions. What does this mean? What is the outlook? What does it mean for our sort of, I guess, not just current strategy? And don't forget, in the world of private wealth, ultimately speaking, we are looking to make long-term strategic decisions so that this is money that's invested over the long term. Now, of course, there are tactical trades that can be done, but our primary focus is ensuring that long-term plan continues to make sense. And that becomes the primary base of the question. What does this mean for our future? So for investors, it's how should I be positioned? How can I position it in the short term? And actually, you find in periods of volatility, there are more questions than there would be in quieter times. So actually, investor appetite, I'd say, has increased. So there is an increased appetite to understand how to trade through the market. There's an increased appetite to know how to be positioned for what we believe is going to happen next. Especially now that we've also, started to see the appearances of vaccines from not 1 but 2, potentially 3 organizations, and suddenly it's well, what does this now mean for the future going forward? And the more questions there are, the more volatility there is, the more we find that there is the appetite from investors to act, to do something. So the short answer is there's an increased appetite for investors to make moves, and it's kept us all very, very busy over the last 6 months.
Thanks. Michael, is it the same for you, or has it been different?
Yeah, it's been the same, to be honest. We're seeing a lot of people at this time kind of moving into the sink or swim kind of mentality. They're seeing that we're in a recession. Everyone's getting furloughed. There's no 100% risk of you even having a job anymore. And people are starting to feel more entrepreneurial, starting to consider more options as opposed to just looking at one source of income. And as Ayos mentioned, trading has naturally been one of the main focuses. A lot of people are taking more risks, are being more focused on, let me try something different, let me get out of my comfort zone and consider putting money in the market. And to be fair, it might not be a bad time to do it because everything is low. They might be looking at short-term views on things, but in the long term, they would have gained a new skill. They would have gained a good understanding in how the markets move. As I said, there's quite a lot of volatility at the moment. But more importantly, they would gain a bit more comfortability in putting their money in these areas and trying something different. And, a lot of the time, people tend to do it out of irrational decisions. People tend to want to buy in the market when the markets are high. And because everything's going up and they want to follow suit and follow the herd mentality. But we're seeing more people actively jumping in now. You could almost assume because they have no option, but it's forced them to make a choice. And a lot of them are choosing to invest more. So we are seeing a lot more interest there. I'm seeing a lot more people that are focused on, kind of putting things in place for their family, thinking more about retirement planning, thinking more about insurance and covering themselves and also thinking more about, kind of what they're going to leave to the next generation as well. So, this COVID situation has just made people question what is going on with their life at the moment and how they should act on it.
Excellent, thank you. A very specific question for Mami. What are some of the opportunities in-house law firm for a New York qualified finance lawyer in London? I think that's very specific. So Mami, over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, I've seen certainly at A&O quite a lot of New York qualified lawyers. We have a US securities team. So I think there are opportunities. I think you really just have to, network with the right crowd and try and get in there. I know that at the moment, certainly A&O has a hire freeze. due to COVID, but things are looking to change, and I suspect in the new year that will change. And I think for in-house, I can't really answer that, but I'm going to give that to Michelle.
I mean, similarly, we're on a hiring freeze on man too. I'm not sure when that's going to actually lift, but I think the key point you made about the networking, I just want to emphasize that. I think, especially now, it's hard. You can't go to this sort of law society events, you can't get to meet people. But one thing that is free is LinkedIn and connections on LinkedIn. So I encourage whoever asks that question is, for you New York qualified, where your interest lies, it may be that it's asset management or going to an investment bank or a completely different sector. Try and use your network to find people who work in that kind of environment, those current places. Add them on LinkedIn, try and get connected, have conversations, have virtual coffees. It may be that there's nothing lined up at the moment, but the fact that you're putting yourself out there, when things do come up, they can think of you and then people can connect you. Because half of these jobs don't even get posted out in the market. People go through their networks. Like so many times that we do it all the time. I go to Steve and like, there's a vacancy coming up that I've seen being posted. Do you know anybody you think would be qualified for this role? I'm happy to put them forward. So try and use your networks. Like everybody you met here, like reach out to Mami, reach out to me and clean up your resume, get it ready so that you're prepared for when the opportunities come. You've already done the hard work.
Yeah, agreed.
Excellent. So there's a question about bringing your whole self to work, and wondering do you always bring your whole self to work, and how has that worked out for you? So maybe let's go to Charles with that question.
Very, very interesting question, bringing your whole self. I think there's a whole question around adaptability here, which is key, right? When you are at work, you should be, for me, I think you shouldn't be like you are at home. You should be a bit different. I mean, you should be a bit more serious, right? Now, depending on the environment where you are in, I think probably because me talking with clients a lot and being in very old environments, I know how to read all those things. But I think you always have to be yourself. But in the meantime, you have to be cautious of, the environment you are with, especially when you get into a meeting or whatever. If you are with, practical example, if you go somewhere and there are some women, and I mean the way, the expression, the way you talk, etc. You have to manage all this, and this is part of of your personal management as the way as you manage yourself. So yeah, you have to be yourself when you go to work, absolutely, because you have to bring this essence of you. But in the meantime, you also have to be aware of the environment, and not saying that everything you say has to be calculated, no, but to some extent, you have to know how to be a stakeholder manager, when you have to speak up, when you have to just not do anything because you choose your battles, and and that's where how you could navigate, I would say.
Excellent, thank you. And I'll probably throw that question to you because, judging by the field you're in and your potential client base, I'd imagine most of your clients don't look and come from where you come from. So do you bring your whole self to work? Or if you're not bringing your whole self to work, how are you managing?
I mean, it's a good question. And the honest answer is that bringing my whole self to work has actually been a journey. Because at the very beginning, when you walk into an environment where, quite frankly, there is only one or two of you doing what you do, you're very conscious of the fact that in my instance, I am one of the only Black employees doing this, so I do not know how I will be received. And I would love to not think about it. I would love to just walk in, be myself, and have no thought process whatsoever. And I think it's almost impossible when you exist as a very extreme minority to not think it. The analogy that I use for this, or that I've sort of, I guess, grabbed onto is, if anyone here has ever played around with their radio, there's a setting called like the equalizer, and you can change it from like super bassy to acoustic to jazz to hard or whatever else, and the song sort of comes out slightly differently. So if I'm listening to music, I'm a bass heavy kind of guy, right? Get the bass there, turn it up, let me hear the speakers really vibrate. That's who I am. And when I think of the workplace, I think of it as I am my own song. I am who I am. I sing the song that is me, Ayo Gabriel. When I'm in a workplace, I must equalize to ensure that those who are around me can take me for who I am, but I must avoid changing the song. I must avoid changing who I am in the process of trying to fit in, or in the process of trying to make sure that, I'm not being hindered or my differences are not becoming obstacles. And that's why it's a journey, because equalizing is very hard to set. If you actually do mixing, it's very hard to set the right setting in one shot. You must adjust, you must tweak until you get to the right setting. And for me, it was, what principles do I stand by as a British Nigerian? What is my personality? Who am I? Where was I brought up? And what settings of those am I happy to make sure I definitely bring to the office? And I don't silence who I am, right? I don't turn myself down. I just equalize so that when I'm in the office, I can be myself, but my settings are being received. And that's why it's a journey, because in each setting, in each environment, you must equalize slightly differently. And by the way, it's not just in the workplace, it's now back amongst friends. I must equalize to the version and variant of me, who is still my song, by the way, it's still who I am. But I've just adjusted the settings back to being super bassy again, right? And the journey of bringing your authentic self to work starts with, do you know who you are? Do you know what you stand for? Number one. And I think many of us don't explore our own selves before we force others to try to accept us. I think you force yourself upon someone if you don't know who you are to impress, right? So understand who you are and what you stand for, number one. Then say, how do I take this variant or that version of me and adjust it so I don't lose my song, but it's being received by the audience. And everyone has to go on their own journey. But I've definitely got a lot closer to bringing myself to work, because people know who I am, people know my song, and that variant I know works well in where. And if that's too vague, by all means grill me, and I'll try to be more specific. But that's how I see it.
Excellent. Mami, what about you? Are you bring your whole self to work in the law firm?
I think when you're, I've been there 12 years, and so I feel quite comfortable because I'm confident in who I am. I believe I'm an asset to the firm. So actually, I can bring myself to work. I'm confident in the fact that I'm Black, I'm from Ghana. If someone says my name's unusual, I'll tell them, no, I'm Ghanaian, I'm not called Mary. So I think it's taken time. Certainly when I was very junior, I wasn't confident. So I was very conscious about trying to maybe conform and looking as to how other people did things. Whereas now I'm just comfortable in who I am. And so I think I do recognize that when you're very junior, it's quite tough to bring your whole self to work, especially when, as we've been saying, you might be the only person in the room. But I think when you're senior, when you've been there a while, you're kind of like, I know what I'm doing. So actually, this is me.
Excellent, thank you. I'm seeing 2 questions around how do you deal with aggressive people at work? So clearly there must be a lot of aggression out there. Michael, I guess in your field, especially starting from a broken background, where often it's a passionate environment, how do you deal with aggressive people?
Don't fight back. No, I think it's when I was broken, I was doing a lot of trades over the phone. So a lot of the clients I was dealing with didn't actually know what I looked like. And I felt that was a little bit of an advantage at first, because I was Black, and I don't want to always bring it back to the Black card and everything, but naturally you always have that at the back of your mind that might play a bit of effect there. But clients that were being aggressive with me, I think you have to learn how to build a bit of temperament and build some thick skin, because in most cases, they're not really angry at you. They're angry at themselves. They're angry at, I was in a position where I was advising clients what investments to trade in, but ultimately it was their decision. And if it didn't go right, especially when I told them to take profit and, the investment went against them, then they'd be very frustrated. But you had to find a way to just kind of be calm and listen to what they're saying, understand where their concerns are, and try and keep them on an even keel going forward. Because in that space as well, it was about recurring business. You didn't want to piss off the guy that you was trading with, because that one trade that goes against you and you're now having a fighting battle with him and he disappears, and now you've got to go back to the drawing board and find 2 more people to replace him. So you had to find a way to keep calm and communicate with them in a kind of civil way. I'm not saying just take all the BS and everything, but you had to find a way to kind of show them that, I understand your frustrations. Let's find an alternative in terms of how we can make things better. and just keep them aligned with the idea that you're working for them, working with them, depending on what the situation is. So, and you get used to it. You get used to it. And you know, when you're speaking to you know, kind of cold calls, I used to do cold calls and stuff like that. You might get people that will, you know, put the phone down on you, tell you to piss off, F off, and all this kind of stuff. And you have to build thick skin. You almost have to go into those kind of calls, assuming the worst case scenario in some cases, preparing for the worst case scenario. I always used to say, you know, kind of hope for the best, expect the worst in these kind of scenarios, so that if something bad does happen, it doesn't bring down your day, because a lot of this is down to your confidence, your self-esteem. If you have 5 calls in the morning and they all go terribly wrong, you can't then let that ruin the rest of your day. So you need to find a way to kind of maintain, you know, take it for what it is, take it on the chin, and just keep going and keep going, move on.
Thank you. And I think, Charles, maybe it's a bit different in your field. I know, you know, you guys are very focused on the minutiae, you know, your presentations, your PowerPoints. If you move the line the wrong way, it becomes a bit of trouble in the office. So how do you manage potentially aggressive managers?
Yeah, I mean, very interesting question, Steve. But before that, I want to say, there's a few people sending me a message directly. Ever probably add me on LinkedIn because I cannot really reply here, or you know, after the Zoom call. I mean, 4 or 5 messages personally to me. I will say, look, you're right, Steve. I mean, this is when there's a pressure, there's a lot of workloads. There's naturally, you know, everyone becomes aggressive. Deadlines are short, etc. I think there's a huge component of self-management, especially in M&A, which is important. Otherwise, I'm sure you will, one day you can go crazy and you never know what can happen, right? And so I would say in the work environment, there will always be the quote-unquote jerk that you say, the people that just don't respect anyone. They're just not friendly at all. They don't want to be friendly. They're just here, you know, that they are on the results. They want to get the things done, etc. I mean, with those people, I would say not fight back, but it's important for you as a person to set boundaries. And boundaries have to be set very quickly, especially with abusive people at work, you know. I mean, there's a line. When you cross it, I mean, you feel me straight. I mean, I'm a zero BS guy in general, you know. If we get into the workspace, we have to be respectful to each other. I know everyone is busy, stressing, etc. But, you know, don't try and push hard, you know, and that's very important. Then those people trust me, they will calm down. Otherwise, if you let things, you know, build up, at some point your work relationship will be so toxic, right? That then you figure out if you want to stay or leave, you have to escalate, etc. And generally, I'm not someone that's complaining about people. No. But you know, it's important to be, you know, well, you know, measured and calm yourself, etc. In the meantime, you know, your boundaries have to be set and they have to be clear so that, you know, people don't sort of, you know, go over your boundaries.
Thank you. Just cognizant of time, so maybe we'll take one last one and we'll wrap it up. And maybe on a lighter note, you know, what books are you reading? What movies are you watching? What programs are you watching? What magazines? You know, what are you doing outside your work life that keeps you interested, but will also potentially benefit you in life or in work? Maybe we'll start with Michelle, because you look deep in thought about that question.
I'm looking at my bookshelf. So I'm like, my own now. That's an easy one. So what I'm reading now actually has nothing to do with finance, and I actually find that sometimes it's helpful to take that break away from the day-to-day things that keep you with work and find something else. So like reading, it's easier said than done, but it could be reading for pleasure, for example. So for us, for me personally, this year with what happened with George Floyd, I chair our Black Employees Network, so we've had to do a lot on Black employee sort of education, Black Matters. We hosted so many things, and out of that actually came some good book suggestions, which I've now been reading. So there's one called British by Ifua Hirsch, which is one that I recently read, which I really recommend. There was another book called The Other West More, about 2 young Black men growing up in Baltimore, which come up with different outcomes. So I do like to read up on things. I find that to be enjoying. Like I said before, I like my super long walks through the park. Keeping fit, I think I enjoy that too. And family. This year has made us all pause and really think about what matters. And for me, is family time. It's like even though we shouldn't be traveling, I still made it to the UK to check up on family, and those are the important things now, I think, to balance that with work.
Excellent. And Mami, what's your take?
To be honest, I struggle to find time to read lots, but one thing I try to do is read the FT and the Economist. And then, like Michelle, love to run, well, not walk, I love to run. So try and do sort of 10K a day, or 8 to 10K a day.
Wow, that's impressive. Okay, I won't say what I do then. Michael, Michael, what's your take on this?
I hate reading. I'll be honest. I think it's so important, though. It's so important. You know, I've been trying to read books like Key Person of Influence to stay on top of things, which has been important to me. When I was trading, you know, I had to regularly read the Financial Times, the CAM, News Now websites to stay up to date with regular news, keep an eye on the markets. But I think it's so important to stay on top of your reading. You know, in most cases, I'm usually reading when I'm studying for a new qualification. And I think that's why it's important, so that you can stay engaged and be comfortable with learning new things. And if you're coming out of university, naturally, it's an easier transition to just jump into a qualification and then just start reading and crack on from there. But once you get into the rhythm of working and grafting and on the phones and chasing clients, you know, the last thing you want to do sometimes is come on and read a book. And, you know, unless you're reading about something that isn't about work, then you feel a bit better. You know, maybe I'm into some James Patterson novels and stuff like that I tend to read outside of work. But other than that, just trying to stay healthy, trying to get the right balance, time with the family. I like to watch films, so it's always important for me to kind of take my mind off the finance when I can, because like IO, you know, the client can contact you at any time, and the job doesn't really stop off the back of that as well. So you just got to find a way to get your mind off that. And I think that helps with the anxiety as well, when you're in the position to take your mind off it completely and focus on something, whether it's your health, running, going swimming, whatever you can do. So I think it's important to do that.
Excellent, thank you. And Charles, I can see very interesting pieces of art behind you, so I'm wondering what your take of this is going to be.
Yeah, I think apart from, like, you know, all the finance reading, etc., I would say 2 books that are important. First book, I would say, you know, especially if you work in a job where it's sort of stressful and you have a lot of things to do, you know, around productivity, 7 Habits of Very Productive People from Stephen Covey. I think it's important if, you know, there's some small tips, you know, how to manage your time, you know, what is important, urgent, and all this stuff. But for me, the best book ever I've read, and I would encourage people to read, especially if they're in finance, it's How to Win Friends and, you know, and Influence People from Dale Carnegie. I think this is a classic, but it will explain to you how to really know how to build relationship with people, because this is a people business at the end of the day. It's finance, things can happen, you know, you can be in a different situation, but because you have built strong relationship with people, you know, that, you know, you can go over this. So if I have one book to say, you should read the one. Now, I mean, reading is difficult. Just have an audio book, you know, find your way. If people find a way to go to the moon, you can find a way to read a book, right? So find your way, and I'm sure it will be very beneficial.
Excellent. And finally to Ayo.
I'm going to steal Charles's theme here and do one finance and one life one. So finance one, very short, very quick. A book by Howard Marks, who I think is a phenomenal fund manager, called The Most Important Thing. I think it just for anyone who wants to, and by the way, not anyone, everyone should be involved in putting their money to work in their life at some point. I think he has a lot of fundamental, very good principles in how to think about putting money to work. It's very recent, it's very relevant to recent times. So Howard Marks, The Most Important Thing. For life, for a very long time, I've just been very obsessed with trying to understand human beings. Why are we the way we are? Which has also meant I tried to understand myself. Why am I the way I am? And growing up, I was always supremely confident, but I had no justification for it. I just was. So I wasn't in control of my confidence. And I think it was, why is it that there is such a wide spectrum of confidence when it comes to humans, when actually I think everyone should inherently be confident? You know, where does this seem to fall off or become so misaligned? And there's a phenomenal book called The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem by a psychologist by the name of Nathaniel Brandon. And it's just a great book and really unpicking what it means to have self-esteem as a human being. And it will go to the very fundamentals of what it means to even have the belief that you are deserving of love and that you have the ability to achieve anything in this world. And those are your 2 cores before you can even begin to have self-esteem in this world. And I just like the unpicking of the human, almost like, call it fabric, right? That is applicable to everyone on this phone calls, on this Zoom. So the 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem is fantastic reading. It will be self-interrogating, but you will discover things about yourself that hopefully will allow you to adjust or rewire or reposition so you can be the best you that you can be. So those are the 2 books.
Thank you to the panel. And thank you all for attending. It's been a fantastic session for me. It's been great to listen and chat to my peers in finance, how they got in, how they've grown, and where they're going to, and the challenges they face, be it racial, be it just work. You had a chance to learn something from them. Like I said, the key thing in this industry is all about networking. So, do with people that were on the panel and, anybody else maybe you spotted within the audience. So once again, a big thank you to the British-Ghanaian Lawyers Union. Thank you so much.